In the vastness of the galaxy, a new force had quietly emerged from the darkness of space. Earth's dark matter fleet, a shadowy force of unknown power, had entered known space. It wasn't a mere fleet. It was a symbol of Earth's new position in the galaxy. For centuries, humanity had been ignored, treated like an afterthought by the galactic powers. No longer. This was the beginning of a new era. The fleet appeared on the galactic radar one quiet evening. The first sighting of Earth's vessels was met with confusion. A few ships at first, then more, until the whole fleet was visible. A dozen massive ships, each unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They moved silently, gliding through space like dark ghosts, leaving no trace in their wake. They were powered by dark matter, an energy source so mysterious that even the most advanced alien species couldn't fully understand it. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. At first, no one took them seriously. After all, Earth was a primitive planet, far from the center of galactic politics. But those who knew better felt the shift immediately. This was no small matter. The dark matter that powered these ships was a force unlike anything known to the galactic civilizations. It could bend space itself, warp the fabric of reality. And no one knew how to stop it. The Galactic Senate called an emergency session. Alien representatives, once calm and confident in their superiority, now sat in tense silence. They had never seen such technology, and their fear was palpable. The commander of Earth's fleet, a man known simply as Captain Alaric, broadcasted his first message to the galaxy, a cold and direct speech. "Galactic Alliance," his voice echoed across the stars. "You have ignored us for too long. You have manipulated our world and our people, using us for your own gain. The time for that is over. We are no longer the weak species you once knew. We come with a warning. Stand down or face the consequences." The message was simple, but it carried weight. The galaxy had never seen a threat like this before, not from a planet as distant as Earth. The alien races, all with their own advanced technology, couldn't fathom how a human-led fleet could wield such power. And yet, Earth's dark matter fleet was real, and it was coming. As the fleet moved closer to the galactic borders, no one knew how to respond. Some called for peace talks, others for defense. But deep inside their hearts, many wondered if they were facing a force that was far beyond anything they could control. Earth, once considered a backwater planet, now stood at the edge of something far greater. The universe, once vast and untouchable, now seemed small and fragile. The first strike was inevitable. And when it came, it would shake the foundations of everything the galaxy knew. This part introduces the arrival of Earth's fleet, setting the stage for the dramatic changes to come. The suspense builds as the galaxy braces for something they cannot understand. The first attack came swiftly. Earth's fleet had arrived at the edge of a colony of an advanced alien race known as the Valen. The Valen had once been the dominant species in their sector, known for their technological prowess and unmatched power. They had long believed themselves to be untouchable, their high-tech weapons and vast resources making them confident in their invincibility. But the moment Earth's ships entered their system, everything changed. The Valen's sensors couldn't even register the fleet properly. It was as if the very fabric of space around the Earth ships had been altered, warped by the dark matter technology. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. No one could understand how Earth had achieved such a feat. Their ships were small in number but huge in power, their weapons deadly in a way the galaxy had never known. The fleet's commander, Captain Alaric, gave the order to strike. There was no hesitation, no second thoughts. Earth had made its decision long ago, to show the galaxy that humans were no longer to be underestimated. The Valen, who once ruled their world with ease, were completely unprepared for what came next. The dark matter fleet's weapons didn't just destroy ships. They tore through the very fabric of space itself. One by one, the Valen defense ships disintegrated into nothing, their once mighty forms evaporating in a burst of energy. In the space where they had stood, A swirling black void remained, a tear in the very space-time continuum. Entire Valen cities on their home planet vanished without a trace. It wasn't just a loss, it was an erasure. The dark matter weapons did more than kill. They wiped out entire sections of reality, leaving only silence behind. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Humans watched in stunned silence as their fleet brought devastation to the galaxy. On one hand, there was pride. Pride in the power they had developed, pride in their survival. But on the other hand, there was fear. What had they unleashed? How far would this power reach? Could they control it, or would they, too, eventually fall victim to their own creation? Captain Alaric stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the destruction unfolded. His face was stoic, but inside, he felt the weight of what they had done. This was not a victory that came without cost. Yet he knew there was no turning back. The galaxy would now know that Earth was not a planet to be ignored. As the Valen forces crumbled, their desperate pleas for mercy broadcasted across the galaxy. The rest of the galaxy watched in disbelief. The Galactic Senate, which had once dismissed Earth as insignificant, now had to face the truth. Earth had made its move, and there was no way to predict what would come next. The galaxy was on the brink. The question was no longer if Earth would continue its campaign, but rather how the galaxy would respond. Would they unite against the new threat, or would they fall to their knees in submission? The reckoning had begun, and with it, the galaxy would never be the same again. As the darkness of the Valen colony stretched across space, the rest of the galaxy was in turmoil. The destruction of an entire alien civilization was a shock no one had seen coming. The galactic powers, which once treated Earth like a tiny speck in the vastness of space, were now forced to confront the unimaginable. Earth's dark matter fleet had proven its power, and no one knew how to stop it. In the heart of the Galactic Senate, a council was called. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a massive chamber, their faces full of fear, anger, and uncertainty. The walls of the Senate Hall were lined with high-tech displays, showing images of the ruined Valen worlds, their cities reduced to nothing but ash and debris. It was a symbol of Earth's power, a chilling reminder that the galaxy was no longer the safe place it once was. The Galactic Senate was made up of the leaders of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had long controlled the balance of power, deciding the fates of entire planets. But now, they were divided. The leader of the Orcs, a cold and calculating species known for their advanced war strategies, called for immediate retaliation. "We cannot allow Earth to continue this madness," the Orcian representative declared, his voice sharp and unwavering. "They've already attacked a peaceful race. We must strike them before they destroy us all." But not all the representatives agreed. The ruler of the Tralnari, a species known for their wisdom and peacekeeping efforts, spoke up in a calm, measured tone. "Retaliation will only lead to more destruction. The question we must ask ourselves is why Earth has done this. What do they want? And is there a way to understand their actions without more bloodshed?" The debate grew heated, the chamber filled with voices shouting over each other. Fear and confusion clouded their judgment. No one had answers. The Valen were gone, wiped out in an instant, and now Earth stood as the most powerful force in the galaxy. What did they hope to gain? Was this an invasion, or simply a message? No one could know for sure. The human representatives, led by a dignified ambassador from Earth, stood in silence as the others debated. They were outnumbered in the room, their voices drowned out by the rising tension. Yet there was something different about the way they held themselves. They were calm, unshaken. "Our fleet has made its intentions clear." The Earth ambassador spoke, his voice cutting through the noise. "We are not here to negotiate or beg for your acceptance. We've come to claim our place in the galaxy. No longer will Earth bow to anyone. And no, we do not seek to destroy every species. But if you challenge us, we will defend ourselves. That is the reality now. Accept it." His words were chilling, and they left the Senate in stunned silence. The galaxy's most powerful leaders were now forced to face the truth. Earth was no longer the small, insignificant planet it once was. It was a force to be reckoned with. A force that could erase entire civilizations with a single command. The Council could not reach an agreement. Some wanted to fight back, while others urged caution. But all of them knew one thing. Earth had changed everything. The universe would never be the same again. Far from the debates of the Galactic Senate, Earth's fleet continued its silent journey through the stars. The fleet's advance was slow but purposeful, a reminder to the galaxy that Earth was now a power to be feared. Captain Alaric, the leader of this dark force, stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars ahead. His expression was cold, his eyes focused, but inside, a storm of doubt brewed. He had always been a man of purpose. When the dark matter fleet was conceived, it was meant to ensure Earth's survival, a defense against the forces that had ignored or manipulated his people for centuries. Earth had always been treated as inferior by the more advanced alien races. No more. But the cost of this power weighed heavily on him. He had watched entire cities disappear in the blink of an eye, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. There was no way to undo what had been done. Alaric's thoughts drifted to Earth's history. The world had suffered so much. Wars, disasters, and constant threats had shaped them into a race that could never give up. From the ashes of past conflicts, humans had always found a way to survive, to rebuild. But that resilience came at a cost. Earth had endured countless struggles, from the rise of tyrannical leaders to devastating natural disasters. Through it all, humanity had fought. They had survived because they were forced to. It wasn't just about power, it was about survival. He thought back to the moments when the decision was made to develop the dark matter fleet. Humanity had been facing an uncertain future. The universe was full of dangers, both known and unknown. Earth's allies were few, and their enemies were many. With every passing day, the human race felt smaller and more vulnerable. The decision to create the fleet wasn't made lightly, but Alaric knew it was necessary. If Earth was to survive in this vast and unforgiving galaxy, it needed a weapon unlike any other. Now the price of that decision was becoming clear. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos, with Earth at its center. Alaric had no illusions about the fleet's power. It could change the balance of the universe, but it could also destroy everything Earth had fought to protect. The power that had been created to ensure humanity's survival might end up being the very thing that brought about its destruction. On the lower decks of the flagship, Earth's scientists worked tirelessly, studying the dark matter technology that powered the fleet. The more they learned, the more they realized how fragile the balance of space itself had become. The very fabric of the universe seemed to tremble under the influence of dark matter, and no one knew what the long-term effects would be. Would this technology continue to protect Earth, or would it eventually consume them all? As Captain Alaric looked out at the stars, he knew one thing for certain. Earth could never go back. There was no undoing what had been done. Earth's new place in the galaxy had been secured, but at what cost? The legacy of survival had led them to this moment, but the road ahead was uncertain. The future of Earth, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance, and Alaric could only hope they could survive the weight of their own power. News of Earth's overwhelming power spread like wildfire across the galaxy, reaching even the most distant corners. The destruction of the Valen colony had left a mark that no one could ignore. But it wasn't just fear that gripped the galaxy, it was anger. Many of the alien species that had once seen Earth as insignificant now saw it as a direct threat to their existence. A coalition of alien forces began to form, united by the common goal of stopping Earth's rise to power. These species, each with their own advanced technologies and unique strengths, had long dominated the galaxy. But now, they found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered. Earth's dark matter fleet was a mystery to them, and they were determined to find a way to destroy it before it destroyed them. The first step of their plan was simple: gather their fleets, create a united front, and strike at Earth before they could grow any stronger. The Galactic Senate, divided and paralyzed by fear and indecision, was unable to act decisively, so the resistance took matters into their own hands. The leaders of this united front were the Aldari, a species known for their advanced war strategies, and the Scythians, a race with powerful energy-based weapons. Together, they began assembling a force that they believed could stand against Earth. But despite their power, they knew that they were walking into unknown territory. The dark matter technology was unlike anything they had encountered before. Even their most advanced weapons might not be enough to defeat it. The battle began in the Zethian system, an important trade route that was now a key point in the galactic war. The alien coalition, with their combined fleets, launched a full-scale attack on Earth's forces. It was an impressive sight. Thousands of ships streaking through the void of space, their weapons charging for the impending assault. But Earth's dark matter fleet, as always, moved with eerie calm, preparing for the fight ahead. Captain Alaric stood at the helm of his flagship, observing the approaching enemy. His face was expressionless, but inside, he could feel the weight of the situation. This was what Earth had feared, and now it had come. The galaxy had united against them, and there would be no retreat. "We will not back down," Alaric said, his voice firm as he spoke to his crew. "We fight to survive, and we will show the galaxy that Earth is not to be underestimated." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Aldari and Scythians threw everything they had at Earth's fleet, but the dark matter weapons proved too powerful. The space around them seemed to warp with every shot fired. One by one, enemy ships disappeared into the dark void, their weapons useless against the unstoppable force of Earth's technology. Despite their losses, the alien coalition refused to give up. They kept coming, launching wave after wave of attacks. But each assault was met with devastating retaliation. Earth's fleet wasn't just fighting back, it was erasing their forces from existence. As the battle raged on, the commanders of the alien coalition realized the true cost of underestimating Earth. They were outmatched, outgunned, and completely unprepared for the power they were up against. But even as defeat loomed over them, they couldn't stop. The fate of the galaxy was at stake. The Great Uprising had begun, and it was clear that the galaxy's greatest powers were no match for Earth's dark matter fleet. But as Earth's enemies fell one by one, the question remained: how far would Earth push before it destroyed everything in its path? The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson that day. In the battle for survival, nothing could stand in Earth's way. The battle against the alien coalition had ended in Earth's victory, but the cost of their power was beginning to weigh heavily on Captain Alaric and his crew. Earth's dark matter fleet had proven unstoppable, wiping out the forces of the Aldari and Scythians with ruthless precision. Yet beneath the triumph, there was a growing unease. The galaxy's most powerful factions had been crushed, but the true power of Earth's fleet was still a mystery, even to those who commanded it. The human scientists working aboard the flagship were the first to uncover the full scope of the dark matter technology. It had started as a way to ensure humanity's survival, a weapon designed to protect Earth from the galaxy's most dangerous enemies. But now, as they dug deeper into its mechanics, they realized it was something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Dark matter, a substance that had once been theorized by scientists but never fully understood, had become Earth's greatest weapon. But no one truly knew how it worked, or what it was doing to the very fabric of space itself. Each time the fleet fired its dark matter weapons, it didn't just destroy ships or planets. It created ripples in the space-time continuum. Tiny tears in reality that might grow with each use, leaving the galaxy vulnerable to an unstoppable collapse. In one of the ship's research labs, Dr. Rachel Kessler, Earth's lead scientist, worked tirelessly to analyze the results of their experiments. The data was overwhelming. The dark matter was destabilizing the very forces that held the universe together. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of nature, one that could easily spiral out of control. "We're playing with fire," Dr. Kessler muttered to herself as she examined the simulations. "If we keep using this, we might end up destroying everything, not just the galaxy, but reality itself." Her words echoed in Alaric's mind as he stood on the bridge, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. The fleet had crushed their enemies, but what had they truly won? The galaxy was in ruins, and they had no idea if the power they wielded could be controlled. Every day, Alaric saw his crew working harder and harder to keep the fleet's engines running, to keep the dark matter contained. But how long could they hold on? In the briefing room, Alaric gathered his officers. The time for secrets had passed. The galaxy needed to know the truth about Earth's fleet. "We've all seen the destruction," Alaric began, his voice grim. "But what we don't understand is the cost. This technology, it's not just a weapon. It's a danger to everything. To all of us. The galaxy may think we're the threat, but we could be the cause of its end." His words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some were fighters, loyal to Earth's cause, while others were scientists, driven by the need for discovery. But all of them had one thing in common. They had come to trust in Alaric's leadership. Now, for the first time, they began to question whether they had made a terrible mistake. The dark matter fleet had been created to save Earth, but now the questions were multiplying. Could they continue using it? Could they control the very forces they had unleashed? Or would it be their undoing? Alaric knew that they were at a crossroads. The fleet's next move would decide not just Earth's fate, but the fate of the entire universe. The choices ahead were fraught with uncertainty. But one thing was clear. Humanity had pushed its boundaries, and now it would have to face the consequences of playing with forces far beyond their control. The real war had only just begun. As Earth's dark matter fleet moved deeper into uncharted space, a growing sense of dread spread through the ranks. Captain Alaric could feel it in his bones. The power they had unleashed was immense, but with each passing day, the universe seemed to grow quieter, as if something was wrong. The galaxy had been forced to submit to Earth's might, but at what cost? They had won battles, yes, but the real question was, could they keep winning? The fleet had left a trail of destruction, and yet there was still no clear end in sight. Alaric and his crew had done what they set out to do. They had broken the strength of the galaxy's greatest forces. But now, they were in unfamiliar territory. Earth was no longer seen as a victim. It was feared and hated. The galaxy, still reeling from the shock, could only wait for the next move. On the flagship's bridge, the atmosphere was tense. The officers were working nonstop, trying to maintain control over the fleet's dark matter-powered engines. Each time they used their weapons, each time they powered up their engines, Alaric couldn't shake the feeling that they were pushing the boundaries of space itself. The fabric of the universe was delicate, and every time they tore into it with dark matter, it was like setting off a chain of events that couldn't be undone. Alaric stood in front of a large viewport, staring out at the stars. They had been traveling for months now, far beyond their home world. They were approaching a new sector, one that had never seen human ships before. The silence of deep space stretched out in all directions, but to Alaric, it felt like something was closing in. The galaxy was watching, and the fate of the human race rested in their hands. "Captain," Dr. Kessler called from behind him. Her voice was calm but filled with concern. "You need to see this." Turning, Alaric followed her into the ship's research lab. The scientist was standing in front of a large screen, displaying a series of calculations and data points. "What is it?" Alaric asked, already sensing the gravity of the situation. Dr. Kessler pointed to the screen. "The dark matter technology. It's destabilizing. The more we use it, the more it affects the space around us. We're beginning to see signs of anomalies, small tears in space-time. They're not just appearing near us. They're spreading." Alaric's heart sank. This was the moment he had feared, the point of no return. The technology that had made Earth a powerhouse, that had turned the tide of the war, was now threatening the very universe they sought to control. The galaxy might not have the strength to fight back, but the universe itself was beginning to rebel. "What does this mean?" Alaric asked. "It means," Dr. Kessler replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "that if we continue using this power, we could be causing a chain reaction, one that could tear apart the galaxy, and possibly everything we know." Alaric stood still for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Everything he had fought for, everything he had worked towards, was now on the verge of undoing itself. Earth's place in the galaxy, once secure, was now fragile. They were no longer fighting alien forces. They were fighting against the very forces of nature. He had led his fleet to this point, with determination and confidence. But now, Alaric felt an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. The universe was unraveling, and it was clear. Earth's triumph might be the beginning of its destruction. The fleet had reached the point of no return. The future was uncertain, and for the first time, Captain Alaric wondered if Earth's victory was truly. The silence that filled the bridge was almost suffocating. Captain Alaric stood at the helm, his hands resting on the control panel, his mind racing. The fleet was moving deeper into unexplored space, and the dark matter anomalies were growing. He had been warned by Dr. Kessler and his officers that continuing to use the dark matter technology would unravel the very fabric of reality itself, but there was no turning back. Earth had come too far, and the galaxy had already seen its might. But the uncertainty that had been growing in Alaric's heart was now something far more dangerous. He had come to realize the true cost of the victory he had sought. The fleet's power was terrifying, but it had consequences. The galaxy was changing, and not in a way that Earth could control. It was then that the betrayal came. A small, quiet message arrived from an unknown source. It was a warning, a plea for help. The message was encrypted, but Alaric recognized the voice. It was Commander Lyra, a high-ranking officer within the fleet, someone he had trusted, someone who had been with him from the very beginning. The message was brief but clear. "We cannot continue this. The dark matter technology is destroying us. It's already started to tear us apart. I can't stand by and watch Earth bring an end to everything. I've seen enough. The fleet will turn against you." Alaric's blood ran cold. Lyra was one of his most trusted officers, someone he had confided in. The message meant one thing. There were people within his fleet who no longer believed in the mission. They were willing to go to any lengths to stop the destruction. With a heavy heart, Alaric called for a meeting of his senior officers. As he stood before them, he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. There was no longer any question about what needed to be done. They were past the point of fixing things. Now, it was a fight for survival. "You've all seen the consequences of our actions," Alaric began, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "This power we've been using, it's tearing apart the very universe. I don't know what will happen next, but I do know one thing. We cannot turn back." His officers exchanged uneasy glances. The tension in the room was palpable. One by one, the officers spoke up, their voices trembling with fear, uncertainty, and anger. "We joined this mission to protect Earth," said one officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Murrah. "But what we're doing now, it's wrong. We're becoming the very thing we fought against. We're destroying the galaxy, not saving it. We're too deep in it now." Another officer, Commander Dallin, spoke up. "If we stop, if we try to turn back, Earth will never survive. We've pushed too far." The debate raged on, each officer torn between loyalty to Earth and the fear of what they had become. But it was clear that not everyone was on the same side. The seed of doubt had already been planted. Finally, Commander Lyra's betrayal was revealed. She had gathered a faction of officers who shared her concerns, and they had secretly started to disable key systems aboard the fleet. They had come to the conclusion that if Earth's leaders wouldn't stop the destruction, they would. A silent alarm sounded across the ship, signaling that the traitors had made their move. Lyra's faction had already begun sabotaging the fleet's dark matter engines. The battle for control had begun. Alaric's heart twisted in pain as he realized the extent of the betrayal. His own people, the ones he had fought beside, were now his enemies. There was no easy way out of this. The fleet was divided, and the galaxy was teetering on the edge of oblivion. As Alaric prepared to confront the traitors, one thought remained in his mind. No matter what happened next, Earth's future, his future, was uncertain. The choices they made now would echo through the galaxy, and the consequences of those choices would be felt for generations to come. The fleet was in chaos. Alaric's eyes swept across the bridge, where his crew was scrambling to contain the damage. The sabotage had been swift and precise. Key systems had been compromised, and the dark matter engines, which powered the entire fleet, were now unstable. The traitors, led by Commander Lyra, had seized control of several key ships, and the fleet was divided in a way that made victory seem impossible. Alaric knew that this was the moment of truth. The galaxy had already seen Earth's power, but now it would also witness the internal conflict that threatened to tear them apart. The once unified force was now split, and the very future of Earth's place in the galaxy hung in the balance. "Captain, we need to act now," Dr. Kessler said urgently, her voice tense. She stood by the control panel, monitoring the fluctuating energy levels from the dark matter engines. If we don't regain control, the entire fleet could collapse in on itself. The damage will be irreversible. Alaric took a deep breath, his mind racing as he weighed his options. If he moved too quickly, he risked further destroying what was left of the fleet. But if he hesitated, Earth's last chance for survival would slip away forever. "We need to take back the flagship," Alaric said, his voice firm. He turned to his officers. "Prepare for a full assault. We can't afford to let Lyra and her faction control the fleet any longer." The officers nodded, their faces grim but determined. They had been through countless battles, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy anymore. It was about saving Earth from itself. Alaric knew that even if they won, the cost would be enormous. But it was a risk they had to take. The battle for control of the flagship began. Lyra's faction was well organized, but Alaric's forces were fighting with everything they had. Every corner of the ship became a battleground, with each side desperate to hold on to what they believed was right. The sounds of gunfire echoed through the corridors, and the flicker of lights as the ship's power fluctuated added to the sense of urgency. As Alaric led his crew toward the heart of the conflict, he felt a deep sense of betrayal. Lyra had once been his closest ally. She had fought beside him from the very beginning. Now she was leading a faction that threatened to destroy everything they had worked for. Finally, Alaric reached the command deck. Lyra stood there, waiting for him. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. She had chosen her side, and there was no turning back. "Alaric," she said, her voice low but steady, "you don't understand. We've gone too far. This power, it's killing us. It's killing the galaxy." Alaric's gaze hardened. "You were once part of this. You knew the risks. We can't stop now. Lyra, Earth's future is at stake." "I understand more than you think," she replied, her voice shaking. "But I can't stand by and watch everything burn. We can't control this power, Alaric. We have to stop before it destroys us all." The tension between them was palpable. Alaric could see the pain in her eyes, but he also saw the resolve. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a desperate attempt to save what was left of the galaxy. But in her eyes, Alaric also saw the destruction of everything they had built. The final war had come down to this moment. A choice between saving Earth or destroying the galaxy to maintain their power. Alaric knew that no matter what decision he made, the consequences would be felt across the stars. But in that moment, all he could do was make the hard choice and fight for Earth's survival. The universe's fate had already been sealed. They were now in the hands of one final decision. The final battle had reached its peak. Alaric stood face to face with Lyra, the woman he had once trusted more than anyone else. The flagship's command deck was a war zone. Broken panels, flickering lights, and the faint hum of malfunctioning engines filled the air. Smoke rose from the damaged walls, and the harsh cries of battle could be heard from every direction. The fleet was on the brink of collapse, and yet the two former allies stood frozen in a moment of painful realization. "You can still stop this," Lyra pleaded, her voice trembling. "The galaxy doesn't have to burn. You've seen the damage we've caused. The dark matter weapons, they've destroyed so much already. We're on the verge of tearing everything apart, Alaric. Please, let me help you." Alaric looked at her, his heart heavy. He knew the destruction that had already been caused. The planets erased, the lives lost, the balance of the galaxy shattered. But stopping now would mean admitting defeat. It would mean the end of Earth's reign, the end of everything they had fought for. "You were once a part of this mission," Alaric said, his voice firm, but his eyes filled with regret. "You knew what it meant to secure Earth's place in the galaxy. We can't back down now. We can't give up our power." Lyra stepped closer, her expression softening with a mixture of sadness and anger. "We've become the very thing we fought against," she said quietly. "We're destroying the galaxy. And in the end, we'll destroy ourselves too. Is that the future you want for Earth?" The silence between them was deafening. Alaric felt the weight of her words, but he couldn't bring himself to let go. The fleet, the power, the survival of Earth, everything was at stake. If they stopped now, if they surrendered, it would all be for nothing. His mind raced, torn between the survival of his people and the consequences of their actions. But as the seconds ticked by, Alaric realized that the true destruction wasn't just in the weapons they wielded, it was in the path they had chosen. The fleet had become a symbol of fear, not strength. The galaxy no longer saw them as saviors, but as the greatest threat to existence. Earth's survival had come at too high a price. Finally, Alaric spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. "We can't go back, but we can end this here, for Earth and for the galaxy." He gave the order to his officers to disable the dark matter weapons and to begin the process of powering down the fleet. The time had come to stop the madness. Lyra looked at him, a glimmer of hope in her eyes, but it was too late for second chances. The damage had been done. As the dark matter technology began to power down, the universe breathed a collective sigh of relief. The chaos that had threatened to destroy everything slowly began to subside. But even as Earth's fleet stood still, damaged and broken, the consequences of their actions were far from over. The galaxy would rebuild, but the scars of Earth's rise to power would last forever. Alaric stood on the bridge, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The war had ended, but the future of Earth was uncertain. They had survived, but at what cost? The galaxy was fractured, and humanity's place in it was no longer certain. But one thing was clear: Earth had learned the harshest lesson of all. Power, unchecked and uncontrolled, could destroy not only others but itself. As the remnants of the dark matter fleet drifted into the silence of space, Alaric could only wonder if humanity would ever truly understand the price of their survival. The universe had changed, and so had Earth. The question now was whether they could ever find a way to live with the consequences.